naked bare roots. So this is when I freaked out. I was like, I've messed up. There were 4 growth points on the stem. 4. It felt really good. I was like, there is hope for this plant at last. Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Emma, and today we're going to be talking about how I rescued my Monstera Thai Constellation from root rot. So in November last year, 2020, I got a very special plant, a Monstera Thai Constellation. I found it on Facebook Marketplace and it was only 70 pounds, which is like a really good deal for Thai constellations because they are so freaking expensive. And so it arrived. I made an unboxing IGTV video of it. You can see in the video, I'm super duper excited about the whole thing. It was a rooted cutting, like how could I not be excited? And then we encountered some problems. Really quick, before I get into the rest of the video, I just want to say if you like this one, please give it a thumbs up down below and comment on other houseplanty things you'd like me to talk about in the future, and subscribe for more. Right, let's get into it. So I think there were a few different mistakes that were made in this whole grand scheme of this plant. Some were my own fault and some were the fault of the seller. The cutting was shipped bare root, which is normally fine. Normally, people put sphagnum around the roots or like a wet paper towel just to keep them damp while it's in the post. The seller didn't do any of that, unfortunately. And so it was literally just shipped bare root, bare, naked bare roots. I didn't know that was an issue at the time. I was a bit naive to it all. I just figured that was normal and be fine. And so I thought nothing of it. But looking back at the IGTV video, you can see that the roots are quite dry. They are, like, they do look very dry. They don't look super duper healthy. I did end up getting a 20-pound refund from the seller later because I told her about the issues I was having and she was like, that probably shouldn't have happened. Here's 20 pounds back. So in the end, it was only 50 pounds, which is an even better deal for a Thai constellation, but it put me through the ringer. So I worked for those 50 pounds. I worked. So as soon as I got the plant, I figured it's got roots, we can pot it up. This is where I made my mistakes. So for some odd reason, I'm not really sure why I did this, I wrapped the roots in damp sphagnum moss and then I potted it up in soil in addition to that, like at the same time. And I think this just overwhelmed the root system with way too much wetness at once. It was kind of like I'd overwatered it. The roots were already dry and probably weren't healthy. And so 2 to 3 days later, this is what it looked like. As you can see, it is not a happy plant. There is something definitely going wrong. So this is when I freaked out. I was like, I've messed up. I've just ruined this cutting. I'm going to lose my Thai constellation. I'm going to lose those 70 pounds. As you can see, the leaf was going like a yellowy brown and I wasn't really sure what it was. I checked for pests. There weren't any pests on it, which was good. I don't want pests. But I figured then it had to be root rot. So I unpotted it from the soil, had a look, and the roots were mushy. So freaking mushy, like so much mush. So I turned to Instagram and I asked my followers, I think through my stories, what I should do, how I could fix this. And I got a lot of help from people on there giving me suggestions on how I can save the plant from root rot. So I ended up trimming off a lot of the rot. I cut down all of those roots that were quite long before but had turned mushy. I cut them down to where they seemed firm and healthy-ish. And then I dipped that cutting the root system in some hydrogen peroxide solution. I did this to kill off all the bacteria that was chilling on the roots, all the stuff that was making them rot. I wanted to get rid of as much as possible, and hydrogen peroxide solution was perfect for that. I ended up using, I think, a tablespoon of hydrogen peroxide with about a cup of water. It wasn't like an exact ratio, but it worked really well for what I needed. And I just dipped the cutting in there quite a lot, let it really, not like soak up, I didn't leave it for a long time, but just dipped it and let the hydrogen peroxide work, right? Just please work. After I dipped it in hydrogen peroxide, I decided I was going to use perlite to propagate this thing now. Perlite propagation is fairly simple. I think it's one of my favorite ways to propagate. I think it's a good way to let the roots get air, but also the moisture they need. So I figured that would be perfect for this because it wouldn't suffocate the roots with too much water, like water propagation might, but it wouldn't let it be too dry. Like sometimes sphagnum, if you don't mist it enough or get it wet enough, it can dry out too much. So I think it's a very good in-between that kind of allows you to keep a better eye on it. So what I did is I took a pot and I filled it halfway with perlite, and then I put the plant in, and then I filled the perlite around it. And so the roots didn't go super deep. And so when I put it in its reservoir of water, I only poured water up to like the 3rd mark, maybe halfway. And so the perlite would soak up the water and like hold some water, but the roots weren't like submerged in it. Once I put it in perlite, I put it under a grow light to make sure that it was getting as much energy as possible. So that's kind of how I left it for the remainder of the time period, but it did take quite a long time to recover. So 1 week after putting it in perlite, the yellowing of the leaf kind of stopped. It didn't get any worse, which is really good because it wasn't getting worse. But also the leaf can never get better, so it's still looking a bit funky. I checked on the roots, so I pulled it out of the perlite just to have a look, check on them, make sure there wasn't anything bad going on there. There was a little bit more rot, which was to be expected, so I removed that and put it back in the perlite. Though I did notice at this time, there were 4 growth points on the stem. 4! It looked like they were all starting to like bud out a bit. I know that might not be the right word, but they were looking like they were starting to activate. In the next few weeks, 2 of the 4 growth points definitely started to grow quite a lot. 5 weeks after I originally put it in perlite, I saw my first root. I was just having a look at it as I regularly did, and I noticed a tiny little root that was kind of like sticking out near the top of the perlite. And so I wanted to have a check. If there's one root, there must be more, I thought. And I was right. It had loads of root growth. Like, it was very, very promising. There wasn't really any more rot, which was great. And I just felt like it was succeeding. I was actually properly rooting. So it felt really good. I was like, there is hope for this plant at last. Also, those 2 growth points that were growing continued to push out more and more growth. So that was also super duper promising. From there, I put it in a new vessel. Originally, I had put the plant in like one of those orange nursery pots that's opaque, and that was fine and it was working really well, but I really wanted to be able to see the root growth, and I didn't have any clear pots, so I ended up makeshifting a sort of clear pot out of the bottom of a soda bottle, like one of those 2-liter bottles. I poked holes in the bottom of it so it had drainage and could like seep up some water, but it basically worked like a clear pot because I could see the roots and keep an eye on the growth and make sure that everything was going okay. 8 weeks in, I had 2 baby leaves on those 2 growth points, 1 on each, and 1 actual proper leaf started to grow in, which was super exciting. I had a leaf spike. That was a pretty big deal. Like, my first proper leaf was coming in, and it blew my mind. And then another 2 weeks later, I had another new leaf, like a proper leaf, and this one was on the 2nd growth point, which is amazing. This is great. Like, I've got multiple growth points growing from this plant. Like, I was beyond excited about all of this. At this point, it also had really, really good root growth. Like, you could see it from the clear pot, which was the intention of the clear pot, was so I could see that the roots were growing really, really well. And they were. So I just left it. I left it doing its thing for quite a long time. And I probably left it longer than I needed to, It was another 10 weeks before I did anything after that, so I ended up leaving it in perlite for 20 weeks, which is a long time. That's like nearly half a year, I think. Very close to half a year. But after 20 weeks in perlite, I decided it was time to switch it up a little bit, and I put it into Pon. So I chose Pon because I've been really feeling it lately. I think it's been working really well for a lot of my plants, and so I figured it would work really well for this one as well. Also, I was a bit worried about switching to soil after having those water roots growing in the perlite. So I was a bit concerned that that transition was going to be a bit intense for the plant. So I figured Pon was kind of very similar to perlite in the way that it is. And if the plant is happy in that sort of setup, why change it too much? Also, I wanted to switch to Pon because it does have a little bit of slow release fertilizer in it, and I thought that would really help boost the growth of the plant. At that time, it had some insane roots. Like, it had grown so many really happy, healthy roots, and it, like, proper root porn there, right? Like, look at those roots. So 5 weeks after I put it into Pon, the third leaf on one of the growth points came out. It has been growing super duper well. So here we are now, 32 weeks into my rescue mission, and it is so freaking happy. So this is the original leaf. It is definitely crispy. I mean, overall, it doesn't look terrible. Like, most of the leaf has stayed quite green. It hasn't really lost much since the original discoloring of it, but look at all these super happy leaves here, and the variegation is so nice. Like, it's perfect. Also, I just saw this yesterday. Look at that. It's got another new leaf coming. This is the 4th new leaf from this growth point. It is going really well from this one growth point. I think this is its main growth point now. This second growth point, the one that did grow a whole leaf, hasn't really done much since. I don't know, maybe it'll grow another one eventually, but I'm not too sure. It's fine. I'm not too worried. The plant seems happy enough that I'm not too stressed about it, which is good, because it was a big source of stress for quite a while there. But yeah, that's how I rescued my Monstera Thai Constellation plant. I'm overall really proud of it. It was some hard work. It was a roller coaster of emotions. I didn't know if it was going to survive, but here we are. I love my plant. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up down below and comment on other houseplanty things you'd like me to talk about in the future, and subscribe for more. Also, if you didn't know, I have a Patreon where I post bonus content, so if you're interested in that kind of thing, head over there and you can get bonus content from me. All right, cool. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!